Joining us now to weigh in on this and more is Larry O'Connor, host of O'Connor Tonight on the Salem News Channel. Larry, great to see you again. First off, I want to get your take on what Eric just mentioned, that meeting between President Biden and Republican leaders to try and hammer out a deal on the debt limit. What do you think needs to happen, for both sides to come together?
As Senator Thune just said in that package from Eric, the debt ceiling, not raising the debt ceiling is not sustainable. But the other reality is the spending that we're on right now is not sustainable. And President Biden and his party, they've had carte blanche to be able to spend whatever they want for the first 2 years of his presidency. And we can see the results of that. I honestly think what's going to happen in the White House negotiations is really kind of a spin operation. Both sides have to come up with their message back to their bases. The Democrats, Joe Biden, he needs to be able to come back to Democrats and say, I stopped the real bad spending cuts that the Republicans are going to put in, and I made it a little bit better. And Kevin McCarthy can say, yeah, we cut spending, which is what he promised to do. Either way, Kevin McCarthy has actually played this pretty brilliantly because he got the House to pass a bill that would raise the debt spending along with cutting spending. And no one thought he could get that done. And that's the deal on the table right now. And there has to be spending cuts. And Democrats are starting to realize that now.
I want to switch gears now. New York, it's making headlines today as it becomes the first state in the U.S. to actually ban gas stoves and furnaces in new buildings. A lot to unpack here, Larry. First, I'm going to get your thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny. This was floated a couple of months ago through a federal regulatory agency. And as you can well imagine, many people were reacting pretty harshly. Yeah, what are you doing banning gas stoves? Most restaurants use gas stoves. I think half of Americans use gas stoves. And in Washington, a lot of the politicians, Chuck Schumer in particular, who was part of that last package, said, this isn't happening. This is conservatives are going nuts about gas stoves. It's a myth. It's not happening. Well, it's happening. It's happening in New York. It's probably going to happen in California. It's going to try to happen state by state. And this is all part of the green energy religion in this country, where people have replaced God with the environment. They're going back to pagan days, worshiping trees and the sun. And it's ridiculous. We have an abundance of natural gas in this country. It actually burns cleaner than coal or oil does, and it ain't broke. So why are they trying to fix it? Well, because they love to virtue signal, these politicians, and say they've done something. And when they try to do something, oftentimes, like in this case, it makes people's lives miserable. Just leave us alone. Let us cook our eggs on our stovetop, crying out loud.
I'm hungry for breakfast now. All right.
Sorry about that.
We have about a minute left or so. Meantime, yesterday up in Vermont, the Green Mountain State, they became the second state in the country to allow non-residents who are terminally ill to go up there and take part in medically assisted suicide. This is something that many people are referring to as death tourism. Larry, how do you see this?
It's a tragedy and it's horrible. And thank God, conservatives and Catholics have a pro-life infrastructure in place right now. If you thought the fight to value life in this country was over with the Dobbs decision, obviously you were wrong. There is, as Pope St. John Paul II said, a cult of death out there. And we need to fight this with every ounce that we have. In Canada, just across the border from Vermont, they've actually extended their assisted suicide to include the mentally ill. Think about that for a moment. And this at a time where in this country, we have a mental health crisis where so many people are suffering from mental illness, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. What kind of society or culture helps people who are mentally ill to actually end their own lives? There's nothing progressive or advanced about that. And this is going to be the next big fight that we're going to have to engage in.
Yeah, we have just a few minutes left, Larry. Curious, what else are you following?
I'm also, my listeners and my viewers at Salem News Channel, my listeners on WMAO in Washington are very involved in the transgender issue right now, especially as it pertains to our children. The activists are continuing to try to inject this ideology into our public schools, our government-run schools. And we now have this amazing phenomenon where teachers are being told to lie to parents. Think about that for a minute. If a caring parent who's involved in their child's life sees changes in their behavior and they're worried about what might be going on, they pick up the phone and they call the teacher and say, hey, is there anything that you can tell me about Jane's behavior at school? If Jane is actually identifying as a different gender at school, the teacher has to lie to the parent. This is incredibly dangerous. Teachers should not be keeping any secrets from parents about their kids, especially secrets that pertain to sexuality. and sexual behavior. It's a horrible thing, and we are fighting with that with our listeners and with all of our guests on our programs, because it's really an important issue to parents in this country.
Absolutely. And as you know, there's a lawsuit out in California. 2 middle school teachers are actually suing a school district over that very same thing. And we'll have more on that coming up in another
That's
program.
Right.
Larry,
thank you so much. I think it's the
much.
lawsuits that are actually going to change this issue, not elections, lawsuits. So yeah. I'm in favor of the lawyers for once.
There you go. Larry, great to have you with you. Always great to get your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.